There are rumors that have come up to the Hill of a secretive project within the Department of Defense.
I've been in a Twitter war.
All of the 7 mountains of society to be taken over.
Those people in the teachers' unions are Marxist, cultural Marxists, often gay.
We're trying to recruit you to tuck your penis.
If you believe in evolution, why don't you just kill people?
I'm like, well then let's go fight. I'll just kick his ass. How's that?
Welcome back to the Fever Swamp Review. Here in Colorado, you've probably already got your ballot. And the big races down here in Colorado Springs are the school board races. We're going to be talking today about the races in District 11 and in District 49. And I had the opportunity to go out and kind of chat with some candidates, get their perspectives on things that are going on. But today we'll start with District 49. School board candidates Lori Thompson and Jamie Lynn DeVola are running for re-election, and they are part of the conservative slate there in District 49. Also competing against Jamie Lynn DeVola is former D49 school board member Ivy Liu, who has, let's just say, a very colorful history on the board. She was removed, and there was some lawsuits, and there was just a lot of craziness around Ivy Liu's tenure, and she was one of the big, parental rights advocates. She got onto the board, going after critical race theory, and then once they got rid of critical race theory, she went after social emotional learning, because that's just critical race theory in disguise. And, she's plugged into this kind of network of very vocal, very ardent kind of school board activists who go and show up and make kind of bombastic statements to the school board there in District 49. And so, her tenure ended, and District 49 right now is probably the most competitive out of all the Colorado Springs area school board seats, right? Because the progressive candidates, Holly Withers and Chris Harrell, have the opportunity to kind of flip the board, right? If one of them gets elected, that would put them in the position to have kind of like a board majority to override the more conservative voices, right? And so those two conservative voices, Lori Thompson, she is, I believe, a real estate agent down in District 49, but she's served already at least one term on the school board. Kind of a more moderate conservative candidate, I would say. She has been targeted by like the Ivy Liu crew over not being fierce enough on SEL and some of these other things. But at the same time, still, District 49 School Board recently voted, they passed a policy to, ban trans athletes from competing in their gender category of choice, and they joined this lawsuit against Title IX at the advice of their attorney, Brad Miller, right? And so I mean, she's conservative, but she's not like, she's no Jamie Lynn DeVola, let me tell you, right? So Jamie Lynn, charter school teacher, been on the board for at least a term as well. She is very plugged in. Like she quoted a David Barton book during a school board meeting. She's been kind of the subject of letters from the Freedom From Religion Foundation for proselytizing to students. Also very invested in kind of these culture war things and stuff like that. So those are the two candidates that, the progressives or whatever are hoping to kind of overturn. And so a couple weeks ago, I sat down with Holly Withers and Chris Harrell to talk about their campaigns, to talk about the things that have been going on in District 49. So here is that. All right, so today I'm joined by Chris Harrell and Holly Withers, who are running for school board in Colorado Springs District 49. So why don't you guys go ahead and introduce yourselves and give your background for the folks at home.
Sure. My name is Holly Withers. I have 4 children in public education, ranging from pre-K all the way to a senior in high school and a couple in between. My background is mostly corporate pharmacy retail, but I had a second career change recently that allowed me to have more of a work-life balance. I do have a child with special needs, so she's in special ed. She's attended at least 5 schools within the district. Oh, I started to get involved with going to school board meetings about a little after the COVID shutdowns happened. Mostly because there were 2 teachers that my special needs child had that were willing and able to come to the house and kind of give parents directions, parents like me, because our kids can't really succeed via Zoom. It's not the same type of climate. And so they would come out of the kindness of their heart. Nobody told them to do that because we were all struggling and they didn't want to see their students fall behind. And after the lockdown was lifted, both of those teachers were immediately fired. I don't know if it had anything to do with that, but I attended a school board meeting not knowing like the mechanics of how everything worked. And I thought, oh, I could just stand up, raise my hand and say, hey, excuse me, what's going on here? But that's not how they conducted it. However, when I was there and I was seeing how the adults in the room were behaving and what they were yelling about and just kind of the decorum that the board was showing, I thought, this is wild. And then I started to realize, like, all of these people are playing this very obvious political game, and who's in the crossfires? My kids. And that's when I started to pay very, very, very close attention. And then when this seat became available, I thought, you know what better time to run than now? So.
Gotcha.
So I have 3 kids ranging from pre-K to 3rd grade. They all go to Remington Elementary, just over there a little bit. I went to high school here in D20. I actually met my wife there. And then I went to UCCS where I graduated with engineering. And so I've been in the defense sector for my whole career.
When did you graduate UCCS?
2016.
Okay, 2014.
Oh, awesome.
So.
Okay, cool.
Oh, dang, 2009.
Oh.
There we go. UCCS.
Mountain Lion reunion.
Yeah.
Yeah, and then so went to Maryland for a little bit, and then we wanted to get closer to home where both of our families are. So went to Utah and finally made our way back here. And so I have some friends who are very involved with education in District 49, and they asked me, like, do you know what's going on in District 49? And I said no. And I went to some board meetings, and I felt like the board could be much better run. And then a few months after that, a friend was like, so hey, the seat that your director district, that seat is open, and we're looking for someone to run. I'm like, great, I hope you find someone good. And turns out that someone good is me. So here I am trying to do my best for my kids and the kids of District 49.
Gotcha. So yeah, I've reported on D49 for a while now. What have you guys kind of been seeing at the school board? I mean, you touched on it a little bit. What's kind of the status of things in D49? Because for those of you who aren't in Colorado Springs, we have 5 or 6 different school districts here, and 3 of them, D49, D11, and D20, have kind of a similar political sort of situation going on. So what's been happening here in D49?
I guess a focus on polarizing national politics that benefits the board members and brings attention but doesn't do anything for our students. So I was actually in Texas for a wedding last weekend, and I was talking to someone and talking to them about District 49. They're like, oh yeah, I've heard about that. There's some big lawsuit happening there, right? And that's really frustrating because we're a great district, and our kids are doing great. And what people are hearing about is this lawsuit that is essentially targeting a very small community within our district. We have very few trans kids, and yet we're going at them, and we're spending a lot of money to attack them when we should be focusing on our entire student body.
And to clarify, so the lawsuit is the lawsuit from the district against CHASA over trans students' involvement in sports, citing Title IX and all that stuff.
Yes. So CHASA allows students to compete in a gender of their choosing, and District 49 chose to go directly against that and told students that they must compete in sports according to their gender identity at birth, right? And the morning after that policy was approved, we went into this big lawsuit that's going to cost the district a lot of money. And we don't have any trans athletes right now. I mean, that's not to say we won't ever. don't feel safe competing, unfortunately. But we're spending a lot of money to do this when we should be focusing on student outcomes and student safety.
Gotcha.
Agreed. I would say that the board, just in the past, 4 or 5 years, it's always very transparent, and it's never a coincidence that they find these hyper emotional topics to basically run on, I think, or to get the public buy-in. And just like Chris said, it's always hyper fixated on something that is really irrelevant, whether it's the trans kids in sports, whether it's mask mandates, whether it's CRT. There's always some niche topic that they feel they need to beat the drum for, even though, like I said, none of it benefits our children. A lot of it is irrelevant, almost made up type situations in order for them to get public outrage and buy-in. And that's what we've been seeing a lot. Just at every board meeting that you attend, it's never calm. And Chris and I have totally different platforms, but I think what we align the most on is that how does this help our students? How does this help the community? And that's really, we just want to be the change. We just want to be the calm and steady that this community is lacking, for sure.
I think something we should make clear is that we're running in two completely different races. So I'm in Director District 4, Holly's in Director District 1.
Correct.
We have different opponents, different campaigns.
Yes.
We're friends and we agree on a lot of things, but we are two different races.
Mm-hmm.
Gotcha. So in terms of like some of these things that are happening, like this focus on sort of national politics, have you guys like talked to teachers or stakeholders? Like how is that impacting sort of boots on the ground or in the classroom kind of operations in the district?
The teachers that I've talked to have felt like it's kind of a return to some of the Ivy League days where it's watching a board meeting can be almost funny in a really sad kind of way, where it's political theater and generating political outrage. And from what I've heard, they want it to be functioning and boring, right? If you go to a school board meeting, it should be focused on the minutia of how to run a district. And most people, like, they're happy to make sure that's going on in the background, but they don't want to hear about it, right? It's boring. And that's what a good Board of Education should be. A boring conversation on how to improve the students' lives.
Correct. The ones that I've spoken to, same thing. They talk about board meetings like it's funny. They're like, oh, I watch it for entertainment. Maybe I won't vote for you because then it won't continue to be funny. And it's like, okay, type of things like that. And it's like, when did we do this weird paradigm shift where people are watching this in lieu of, I don't know, Jerry Springer or Maury? Like, that's wild. And I could tell the reaction when I was just collecting signatures to get on the ballot is just people have this weird aversion to school boards now because they've almost become synonymous with, yes, national politics and theater and people pretending like, they're helping our kids when really they're just spending money on these cute little pet projects. I mean, I don't think they're cute, but they do, right? And so, too, teachers, they just want to see normalcy. I think at the end of the day, the consensus, like all jokes aside, is that everybody wants to return to normalcy and decency. And I think that Chris and I could definitely bring that back.
So talk a little bit about, what you're running on. What do you want to accomplish as a school board member? What kind of policy initiatives or things would you like to enact?
Yeah, so the two big things are student outcomes and student safety. That's kind of an obvious thing that every candidate should be running on as a primary focus, right? It's not always the case, but that's what I'm focusing on. And then after that, balancing fiscal responsibility with a competitive staffing environment, trying to lure some teachers over from D20 and D11 where they're struggling with their teacher retention. And then supporting our military families, because we have a very high number of military families in this district and they deserve focus.
Yep. Mine is very similar, so fairness, transparency, and student outcomes. I obviously want to emphasize on special education and retaining teachers for that, getting paraprofessionals that are not only equipped, but they have more rigorous background checks. That's super important to me. Obviously, the curricula that we decide or approve, I would love nothing more for it to be actual data-driven, accurate, with the least amount of bias in it whatsoever. And yeah, I mean, I am all about student outcomes in academics, but also in character.
Gotcha. So in terms of like some of these issues, right? So you're talking about student safety. One of the big things that gets thrown out after every kind of mass shooting. Our last podcast episode was on kind of gun violence and this sort of thing. There's been a big push from some conservative advocacy groups like Faster Colorado to arm teachers and have teachers carrying weapons in the classroom and things like that. Is that something that's taken hold in D49, and do you have a position on that?
I haven't heard conversations about it. I do have a position. I don't think it's a good idea. None of the teachers I've spoken to think it's a good idea. At a bare minimum, you would need to have teachers who are extremely well qualified and training all the time in order for me to feel comfortable with them being armed. But even then, I think adding a potential weapon to the classroom is just not fruitful for education. I think it's a distraction at best and a threat at worst. I do not think that is an appropriate way to handle our gun violence problem.
Gotcha. And so you had mentioned kind of character, and that's an interesting phrase that gets brought up in a lot of school board kind of conversations, and a lot of it like what do you mean when you talk about character? And it sounds a lot like social emotional learning, which I've heard is the new communism.
Okay, so for full transparency, because that's what I'm all about, I guess it is exactly that. As far as communism, I don't know, and a lot of people throw communism and socialism around like it is what it is, but social emotional learning, absolutely. I don't think there's anything wrong with that, and not to keep harping on it, but when you go back with like children like mine, for example, who are integrated into general education classes at sometimes, and she gets peer-on-peer assistance. So she has a para or she has an aide with her 100% of the time, but when you put these kids in a situation to be around other people that maybe they wouldn't be exposed to within their community, their church, or their home, and they start to, buzzword, I don't know when it became an ugly word, but empathy. I think empathy that's what makes the world go round. Like as humans, we are meant to be pack animals. We're meant to rely on each other. That proverbial, it takes a village. It does take a village. And that includes everybody. And I've just seen walking into my students' school and how many people know her name, will treat her like a human being, where you take her out grocery shopping and adults don't know how to interact with her. And I think that alone gives kids a sense of camaraderie, and it gives them like peace of mind. And I would assume it's sort of fulfilling, and just teaching kids to be able to reach out and look for understanding before snap judgment is always the best line of defense in hatred.
Gotcha. So can you talk to me a little bit about what it's been like kind of running a school board campaign? One of the things I've noticed in the past couple years, school board, I feel like when I was growing up, like no one paid attention to school board elections, and it was just kind of like former teachers or whatever. And now we're seeing hundreds of thousands of dollars being injected into school board races from independent expenditure committees and PACs, and it's a nonpartisan position, but there's very significant partisan interest. And I was at a Republican candidate forum, and Jeff Crank was there, and candidates from
D49 and D20 and D11, like school board candidates, were at this thing with a congressman. And, have you guys been hanging out with Michael Bennett or John Hickenlooper?
Nope. I don't know about you, but for me, it's been a very small. I have a small team and a small group of volunteers just working very hard, and we don't have much money, but we're walking and knocking on doors, and that's what it's been like. So.
I also agree, and it's really unfortunate, right? Because you used to be able to run a school board campaign on, I don't know, $3,000. And people are pumping in a lot of money into it, and you have to kind of wonder what that's all about. But two, I mean, I'm really proud at the money that I have raised. It's completely small monetary donations. I have a completely grassroots campaign. It is fueled by the community, parents, teachers. I've even had students, donate to my campaign, and that feels better to me. That feels more like a win to me than some super PAC coming and, throwing a bunch of money my way. I have attended things, though, if I'm being honest, not with, Democrats per se, but I've attended a lot of training for women in politics that had Republican and Democrat representation, so I've been around both. But yeah, no specific endorsement, here you go. I can't speak for Chris, but I'm not a Democrat. I'm not a Republican. So it's kind of hard to get endorsement from parties when you're not one of them. You're not in the group, you're not in the club, but I am endorsed by the teachers union. I'll just be transparent about that. I am part of the Working Families Party, which is very progressive. I'm not going to lie about that. But again, I haven't sought any kind of monetary or public endorsement from any of those major things. So.
And it's interesting. It may be slightly getting off topic, but you think of school boards candidates as nonpartisan, and it's true that when we talk about how to balance a budget, that's something that both a liberal and a conservative can be good at. In fact, if you look at this board, there are two directors that I really like, and they have opposing political views in terms of national politics, but they're both great school board directors. And I tend to think that I can appeal across the political spectrum, even if I may lean left in many cases, but the things that I'm focused on, everyone wants to know is going well. And it's frustrating that school board campaigns can become so polarized when it's so unnecessary. We should not be talking about who you voted for president or what party affiliation you are. What can you do for our kids? That is the conversation that needs to happen. And most of the time it is, but there are exceptions that can become incendiary.
And I agree with that 100%. I wish that it wasn't a factor. And I think the only reason that we even bring it up is because we've had to listen to them talk about it for so long. And that too is kind of like that gross feeling about it, because at the end of the day, I'm going to trust a board member that I don't know where you stand politically. I don't know where you stand in your religious endeavors. I don't care. And I think that we both agree on that as well. I mean, I just wanted to put it out there for transparency reasons, but yeah, I'm neither nor.
Yeah.
And I have no hidden agenda. I'm not doing anybody's bidding. I just want what's best for all the kids, because at the end of the day, 40 years from now, 60 years from now, these are the kids that are going to be taking care of us, and we have to make sure that they are good to go across the board, that we send them off into the world and they don't have their minds blown by just the amount of stuff they don't know because the adults that are in charge of their education spent too much time
fighting with each other.
Yes, exactly. Yeah.
So, kind of talking about the polarization and stuff, what has, you guys are knocking doors and everything, what have those conversations been like, and are people, it seems like, the voting demographics are pretty set in their ways, and there doesn't seem to be a lot of middle ground conversations happening? Like, are you winning people over, or what's the reactions been in your campaigning?
It's hard to tell if we've won people over. I think having conversations and kind of destigmatizing ourselves as like the opposition to what they're used to might be a little frightening, but then once you start talking to them and they realize that you're just, a normal person and you don't have any weird nefarious intentions, that they're like, oh, okay, but we don't really know until November 4th, honestly. A lot of my conversations that I had, again, at the very beginning, every single person wanted to know if I supported book bans. And that was a conversation I had with both, your conservatives and your liberals, both for two totally different reasons. So a lot of it is, I feel like a lot of door knocking comes with education and kind of taking the wind out of the sails of these national problematic areas. And again, just kind of having organic conversation with people. That's truly the testament. So even if they don't vote for us, I think at the end of the day, they're not going to be upset or disappointed if we win. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, I'd say overall conversations have been very positive, even like when I run into disagreement, whether, from whatever issue, people tend to be pretty positive. I think that there are some very loud voices coming from some very small groups of people that tend to just amp up the hate. But I think most people are willing to have productive conversations with people they disagree with, and that has been my experience. Maybe I'm just overly optimistic, or maybe we're just targeting the right people. But I've had a lot of really good conversations. Gotcha.
What would you say has been like the biggest obstacle or difficulty in running a school board campaign?
I'm not going to speak for you, but both of our director districts are very small. And so we have a very small pool of people to pull volunteers and donations from. And so we're often competing with D20 and D11, where many people, and getting volunteers in a room with D20 and D11 is very difficult. Even though like D49 is such a huge opportunity right now, because if either of us win, the board flips and becomes more reasonable. And so just getting people to care has been the biggest difficulty. They're happy to be like, yeah, I'll vote. But I'm like, okay, but can you get involved? I'd love help. And they're like, yeah, no.
Yeah, I think people have a timidness around it, and I don't blame them, because it's definitely hard, even as a candidate, to just get out of your shell. Like, it's been really wild. There are some days that I don't feel safe being out canvassing, and then there are other days that, I'm overly optimistic, and I'm just like, vibing, doing my thing, and it really just depends on how many positives I got as opposed to that one negative. So it's a lot of reminding yourself of the good things and not the bad things, but it has been incredibly difficult to get people involved, and I think it's because it's so small and it feels insignificant on some level to a lot of people. But what they don't understand is that these small elections are actually where you get more of like a face-to-face with your local government. Mm-hmm. And I wish people would appreciate that, or at least participate and vote. I mean, historically, school board campaigns have the lowest voter turnout. But again, if people realized that this is your opportunity to have the most say about where your tax dollars go, whether or not you have kids in the district, you have an immediate face-to-face opportunity. School board members are more probably agile and able to answer your questions, meet you for coffee, anything like that, where any other local government or federal government, you don't have that. So this is like up close and personal. So it's like you can either participate or not, or as I like to say, you can either be a windsock or what makes the wind blow. The choice is up to you.
Gotcha. Well, anything else you guys want to say about your campaigns or what's been going on? Do you have any websites or anything you want to plug? How can people get involved?
Yeah, just that. So both of our win totals are very small. So every little bit of help that we get has a huge impact. So you can find me at Chris Harrell for D49.com. That's there's my name, Chris Harrell, and then it's the number 4. And we're just looking for donations and volunteers, and any bit of help we can get has a huge impact.
You can find me at Holly4, and that's spelled out for 49.com, but you can also find me on Instagram, Facebook, TikTok, all under the same name. We are looking for any kind of monetary donations, but really we just want your time. We just need some help talking to our voters.
Gotta knock on those doors.
Yeah, talk to your friends and neighbors, honestly. If you can talk to 10 people, that could be what makes the world of difference, because like I said, this is local politics and you can determine the outcome.
So in the district of Colorado Springs School District 49, there's also an election happening in D11. And you may have heard District 11, the teachers there recently went on strike over the dissolution of the master agreement with the union last year. So here is kind of some of the video that I captured from the strike, and a conversation with 2 of the progressive candidates, Michael Karsten and Charles Johnson. So, hi, could you guys introduce yourselves and say what you're running for?
Michael Karsten, I'm running for the 11th School Board.
Charles Johnson, also running for the 11th School Board.
Gotcha. So what brings you guys out here today?
We're standing in solidarity with the teachers and parents, community members, in protesting the cancellation of the agreement last year with the teachers.
So what inspired you guys to run for office here in D11? Why join the school board?
Well, I grew up here in Colorado Springs my whole life, 25 years. These teachers, while they're retired, are currently impacting my life. They've shown me what opportunity can actually be outside of just the classroom and what they're modeling to do for me. Just giving back to my community. That's what I want to see. Being a representative.
No more promises! Basta de promesas! No more promises!
I was asked to run by a teacher friend of mine, and the more I learned about the hubris of the current board and the superintendent, the more drive I had to be a part of it, be a part of the change.
Gotcha. So one of the things we're hearing today, a lot of people kind of pushing back about like the political bent of the board and some of the decisions that have been made by the current board. Can you guys kind of speak to that, or tell me, what's been going on in D11 that's so concerning for people?
Sure. By ending the agreement last year, an unprecedented move, the agreement's been in place for over 50 years. For some reason, this board thought they knew better than the last half century of other boards. And they ended it specifically so they could have autonomy and not collaborate at all. So they're now making moves. It's a natural progression. They are literally cutting pages out of textbooks. They are putting people on administrative leave if they don't like their words. They've threatened every teacher out here today with their jobs. It's not okay.
I think it's unacceptable. Like you said, it's about collaboration. To remove that master agreement, create a handbook that does not solely collaborate with the teachers and educators is a disservice. Like, we need to come back to the table and have those voices heard, no matter our beliefs in education. At the end of the day, we all believe in that. And taking teachers out of that conversation is only going on.
And it's pretty apparent when they ended the agreement last year, 400 teachers quit. Over a quarter of the teachers in this district left. And that's institutional knowledge. It's going to take a decade to build back up. Who even knows how long it's going to take?
Gotcha. So as, should you guys win your elections, get put on the board, what would be kind of your priorities coming on as new board?
Yeah, it's these things, the value of progress for as well. Knowing that educators, not just our teachers in the classroom, pretty much do the most make sure we have some make sure we do have a foundation of kids to be able to learn. We would have to touch the foundation. And what if our plan is not work to double the gap and over something? Just trying to make life for every teacher to have a great day. Nutrition. That's
Right. Transparency, financial, and collaborative to get the teachers back to the table and make them feel respected. And they are necessary. They are the conduit. This is about kids. This isn't about the teachers. They're not getting paid today. They have had their jobs threatened. They are standing here, the students of D11, and so are we.
Anything else you guys want to say about today's event or your campaigns or anything that's going on?
I'll say the thing about the campaign. Last week, Michelle Rule, who's also running for the 11th school board, on a slate of 3 very like-minded people. She's one of 3. She proudly announced that she would be crossing picket lines today to take the $300 bounty of subbing at Mitchell High School. So if you want more of the same, you know where to look.
I would just say, this is a people power movement. It's about our future, it's about our history. This has history that we talk to generations, memories before. I think that's what it's more than ever. This is not just a cause, this is the nation. It's all the
One, I guess last week, so I got your press release earlier this week about the kind of attacks against you in this campaign, and we've seen, over the last couple cycles, a lot of kind of dark money and big political machinery getting involved in these school board races. Would you be willing to kind of talk a little bit about what's been going on and kind of your response to it? Like, what it's been like?
Yeah, I mean, my response is, I'm doing the right work. I'm doing the right work. I learned my lesson in my life. Towards what better children. Never asked for a better story than other
So one of the things we heard a lot about the strike from both, the conservative candidates and anti-union sort of representatives, folks on the board, right, was the influence of kind of outside interests, right? The CEA is part of the Colorado Education Association, and so going back, the strike is being performed by the Colorado Springs Education Association, the District 11 Union. The D11 union's parent organization is the Colorado Education Association, the statewide teachers union, and then the national organization is the NEA, or the National Education Association, right? And a lot of the lines that you get from various conservative activists are that, that it's this communist plot to take over schools, despite the fact that D11 was the only district in Colorado Springs to have an agreement, and that union numbers are falling, and all of these things, but it's the unions that are the problem, and it's these outside groups that are agitating. And one of the criticisms that people brought in was that it's these outside people, and it's a union, it's a labor thing that's going on during the strike, and so of course you did have a lot of Colorado Democrats who showed up. On the picket line was Breonna Tattone. I ran into Jesse Danielson at the rally at Acacia Park. There were various candidates, right? John Mikos, who's also running against Breonna Tattone for treasurer. Joe Regan, who's running for CD5. Like all kinds of people who are involved in the Democrat sphere were out there for the strike. They were wearing red. They were supporting the teachers. But then you also had kind of the other side, right? And it was interesting because Ryan Walters, who was the former superintendent of schools for Oklahoma, who, had is currently under an ethics investigation for conflict of interest and had a previous ethics investigation and kind of got some scrutiny for accidentally playing porn on a screen during a meeting, and who introduced the Bible into public schools in Oklahoma. Controversial figure, but he was there. He was joined by Jason Dudash of the Freedom Foundation. And for those of you who don't know, the Freedom Foundation is like the Koch brothers kind of anti-teachers union organization. Freedom Foundation has been active here in Colorado. They do these campaigns where they kind of call teachers and try to like talk them out of being a part of the union. They're engaged in other sorts of activism. They have links obviously to Americans for Prosperity, which is, the Koch brothers kind of flagship political activism group. And so Walters is in charge of Teacher Freedom Alliance, which is kind of this, again, Koch brothers anti-union group. But he was out here in Colorado Springs. He did a little press conference. So we're gonna play that, and I get a little question in there at the end. So here we go.
Are opposing the one-day strike here?
Yes.
Please tell us why.
Yeah. Well, I wanted to thank everybody for being out here this morning. My name is Jason Dudash. I'm the West Coast Director of the Freedom Foundation. And my entire job description at the Freedom Foundation can be summed up in 3 words, and that's fight government unions. And over the last decade, I found that one of the most effective ways of doing that is to just showcase their own behavior, which is why we're out here this morning. What we're seeing across the street from us is what teacher unions represent today, which is chaos and division. CSEA is throwing a temper tantrum because they've lost power. That's what this is all about. It's about politics and power. It's certainly not about teaching conditions, it's not about teacher pay, and it's not about students. We know this because they're only out here for about 2 hours this morning and are going to be spending the rest of the day canvassing for all the liberal candidates in the area. What this is definitely does not represent, though, is most teachers. Most teachers are in the classroom this morning. Most teachers continually prioritize students over union politics. But regardless of that, what is happening across the street is always the only viewpoint that's ever represented to the public. There's never been a group to speak for the teachers that are in the classrooms continually working for our students, which is why earlier this year we launched the Teacher Freedom Alliance, and I am happy to pass it off to my colleague, former Secretary of Education for Oklahoma and new CEO of the Teacher Freedom Alliance, Ryan Walters.
Jason. Let's be clear. The unions are out here today fighting for power. They're trying to shut down school and education so they can get more money. You've got good teachers in the classroom there trying to teach today. You have parents that drop their kids off to school. But the teachers' unions are out here because they want to push an ideology on your kids, because they want power, they want control. We're here to defeat the unions. We want to put education back where it should be, where we're focused on academics, we're focused on the kids. But what you're seeing today, we should be talking about the teachers in the classroom that are fighting back against this radicalism. They're out calling the teachers this morning scabs. The teachers that are out trying to teach kids this morning, the union is attacking them. The union will use any kind of power or coercion to keep their place in power, to keep their control. We're going to stand with parents. We're going to stand with members of the community that want their kids to have a good education. The unions are standing in the way of that. We're here to fight back, standing with parents, standing with the community. You're seeing the ridiculous nature of our teachers' unions, the radicalism, fighting back against that. That's why we're here. That's why these folks are here. We want kids to get a good education, minus union politics.
So how would you suggest that teachers like these who are striking and are kind of at an impasse with their administration, how would you advise them to try to get whatever it is that they're looking for?
Well, number one, they need to get back to work. Okay, they need to all get back in the classroom and teach these kids. There's plenty of ways to talk about salaries and things like that. That's not what this strike is about. They want money for their union bosses. They want control. They want to force all the teachers in the building to join their union. There's plenty. The teachers are being paid. They need to take administrative pay, put it in the classrooms, put it in teacher pay. But shutting down a school and taking kids as ransom and saying we're not going to teach these kids till we get what we want, that's not the way education should work. You should always put kids first on what you do. Don't threaten the kids' education to get what you want.
And I'd also encourage you to go across the street and ask these people on the picket line where they're from. Because most of them are not from Colorado Springs. CSEA had to bus people in from around the state to be at the picket line this morning. And we know that because most teachers are still in the classrooms. They're happy with this new arrangement, not being any longer beholden to the union. And just as a side note too, one of my buddies this morning sent me a Facebook post of one of the organizers here this morning reminding protesters not to drink and do drugs while on the picket line, which I think tells you a little bit and speaks for itself about who's actually out here this morning.
One of the things that we've heard from candidates regarding the strike is the influence of outside kind of interest groups, like specifically the NEA. But I mean, Freedom Foundation, Teacher Freedom Alliance, aren't you guys just kind of a conservative or libertarian NEA? I mean, what's your interest in this Colorado Springs school district?
Absolutely not. Our interests are the kids in the classroom. Our interests are the teachers that are here to teach. We will not allow unions to continue to hijack our schools and try to turn this country into a Marxist dumpster fire. That's what the unions want to do. We will fight back against that. We'll make classrooms great again. We will continue to promote American values in the classroom unapologetically. That's what the country wants. That's what parents want. That's who we will stand with. We will always fight back against Randy Weingarten and her thugs that are out trying to intimidate people, and we won't stand for it anymore. Thank you guys. Appreciate it.
So that was the outside agitators from the anti-union perspective. And then, so the night before the strike, I actually attended a Church for All Nations candidate forum with some of the D11 folks. And here are those D11 teacher candidates. So we've got Michelle Rule, a former Air Force officer. We've got Bruce Cole, a former D11 teacher. Jeremiah Johnson, who's a current D11 employee, and then John Gustafson, who, as the kids say, is pilled to the gills. So here they are, first of all, talking about the strike.
Master agreement that was not helping teachers anymore. It had expired. So all this rhetoric about the master agreement being canceled, it had come to its expiration date and it needed a new, fresh look. So right now, the strike, the signs say it's a strike for students. That is absolutely incorrect. It is a strike set up by the CSEA, the union, to get teachers out of the classroom. I went through the process. I have a PhD. I went through the process of becoming a substitute teacher in D11. I will be in the school tomorrow because I stand for students. I'm not going to abandon them, and not all working parents can just pull their kids out of school. I understand that teachers are frustrated. I've been a teacher for a very long time. More compensation is a great thing to ask for, but not the way it's happening at the expense of the students. So yes, a strike is an American thing to do, and that's great, but not when our children are affected. So there are not enough substitute teachers to come into the schools tomorrow, but we're going to all be in the school and we're going to make it happen. And I know I will be there teaching aviation, and every child that wants to show up, I will teach them something. So I'm asking, if you're watching this, if you're listening, please don't strike, don't leave the students, be in the schools tomorrow. The kids need us.
Well, my thoughts on this strike go back a long way, all the way back to May, when the vote was taken to go on strike, and I voted no, that I thought it was a stunt for political gain and has absolutely nothing to do with teachers' rights, teachers' input into the district, those kinds of things. The master agreement was 58 years, I believe, is the number in our district. And over the years, that master agreement kept weaving its way into the administrative principles of the district until it got to a point that the things that the district needs to do to improve our district was no longer possible because the master agreement was being used to stifle any innovations or anything like that we wanted to do in the district. It needed to go away, and it has. And I'm so thankful for our board that courageously chose to let that master agreement expire. I will be an English teacher at Doherty High School tomorrow. I'm set up to be there. I'm going to support the kids that are there. I'm going to be supporting the probably 75%, guessing, 75% of the teachers in District 11 that are still going to be in the classroom tomorrow. This is not the majority of teachers, and I'm going to support those teachers that are standing up for kids tomorrow.
So my wife is a teacher, as I said in my intro. She deserves the best pay. She deserves the best benefits. She deserves a disciplined and orderly classroom. She deserves support from her administration. She deserves a safe school to teach in. All of our teachers deserve these things, and we should make them happen. But I don't know how this strike is going to do any of those things. We're taking a day off of work. We're sacrificing that relationship with our families, and we're going to go knock doors and hand out flyers for our political candidates. That's what's happening tomorrow. Not a strike for benefits or pay or support. They're going canvassing. So how is this not a political stunt? That's what we're seeing. So I will be teaching a random subject. I have no idea. I'm getting deployed to a middle school tomorrow, and I will go wherever I need to go, and I will teach whatever I need to teach to support our students. Again, our teachers, they deserve better pay. We need to recruit and retain the best teachers that we can get for our students. So 100% support behind them, but I don't know how this strike helps that.
When I first heard about the strike, I asked myself, is the CSEA out of its MIND? It is bonkers to me what they're thinking, but also very telling. It's very telling how people from my community have been taken so off track and become so misaligned because of special interests from Denver telling them what to do. I have spoken with people in the union, people my age and a little bit older. They don't know what the union is anymore. It's gone radical, it's gone crazy, it's gone a little bit more than that, but I don't want to use too strong a language. And it's unfortunate. They shouldn't be doing it. It's not in the best interest of the students. It's not in the best interest of the families. It's not in the best interest of the community. And it's yet again another sign, much like we have political people in Denver sending out mailers slinging mud, while at the same time having nice faces. Special interests get us into places where we're doing things that we normally wouldn't do. And now all of a sudden the environment we're in and the environment we're leaving for our children has become uglier. And I don't like that one bit. And I wish they wouldn't strike. They're wrong for doing it.
And then they also, fielded other very important school district topics, right? Critical race theory, DEI, social emotional learning.
And I do not support critical race theory. I do support teaching history as it happens and being very respectful. In fact, I am German by descent, and I recently went to Germany. And when I went to some of the schools there and talked to people there, yes, there is some shame about being German, but there's also an immense pride in forgiveness, in looking forward, in growing. And I was very proud to be German, even though I can still regret some of the things that actually happened within history. And I think that's the way we teach U.S. history also. Additionally, I do follow executive orders. I worked at the White House for 2 years under President Biden and President Trump, and I actually wrote executive orders. I'm very familiar with how they work, and it's our commander-in-chief asking us to carry out an order. So yes, I would abide by that.
I do not support the teaching or training in critical race theory or DEI. I was thinking about it today. Somebody asked me what my first job was, and I remember standing in front of the grocery store selling grit newspapers for a dime, and then had my Denver Post paper route with the big canvas bags on my Schwinn bicycle. And I've been working since I was a young kid, and I can tell you that work ethic has told me that not everybody has the same outcome. Everybody should be given the same opportunity, but not everybody should be guaranteed the same outcome. And that's where I think there's the biggest problem with a lot of the DEI and the critical race theory issues that are happening. As a result of that, I would support the federal executive order to remove all CRT and DEI from our district. I think it's harmful, not just to our children, but I think it's harmful to our society. We need to all understand that God created us equal, and we all have those equal opportunities, but we shouldn't expect that everybody is going to be guaranteed the same outcome.
No, and yes.
No, I do not support the teaching or training of critical race theory in our schools. I do not advocate divisive politics in our schools. I do not advocate any type of unpatriotic animus that's synthetically produced. Forgive me for being so wordy. If we're giving that federal executive order, I'm going to follow it. If it needs to come out, it needs to come out. I care about people. I don't want to bully people. I want to meet people where they are on the level. That being said, if there's an executive order, we need to make it happen. Thank you very much.
Transgender athletes.
/affirmative care.
This one's interesting. We didn't deal with this when we were younger, right? We didn't have these issues come up. I used to get called a tomboy, and I played boys soccer for a very long time under Title IX. But I never had this pressure to say I wanted to become something other than what God created me to be. And so these bills that are coming forward about affirming what a child thinks. I have a 6-year-old boy. Some days he says he's Superman. Okay. Are we supposed to affirm him as Superman? No. This is what children do. They don't have their brain, their prefrontal cortex. It's not grown enough to be able to identify. What they need to be taught is you are born a beautiful boy or girl in the image of God. But of course, we can't say those things in our public school. But to have the law come down and try to tell us that we have to affirm what a child wants to call themselves on that day is criminal. This shouldn't be in our schools, and our teachers who are being held to affirm a child who is confused, and that's coming from their home. We shouldn't be asking our teachers to carry that burden either.
I'm going to age myself a little bit here, but some of you, I look in the audience and you'll get this reference. I remember when I got my first pair of PF Flyers. You guys remember PF Flyers? Because they promised that I could run faster and jump higher. And I got them, and I ran off the porch at my grandpa's house, and I jumped off the porch and fell on my face, and the shoes didn't help me at all. It's kind of the way I think things are with what we're teaching our kids on the whole transgender thing, is we think that if we tell them you put on the right clothes, you take the right medications, you do these kinds of things, you can change who you are. And the reality is, the first question I was asked at the first event I attended as a candidate, I was asked how many genders are there? And my answer was, I believe there's 2. And that's where I think that we need to be. I'm going to affirm kids in my school, whatever it is that they're going through. I'm going to affirm them. I'm going to be there for them. But I'm going to be honest with them. And I'm going to talk to them out of love.
So in our case, that's policy ACA. I think that this falls into that bucket of 400 policies that we probably should reject, and if needed, legally challenge at the state level as a board. I think we're now at a point in Colorado where we should no longer be afraid of legislation and fighting it in the courts if we have to. I think that we've identified in the transgender community that there are serious mental health issues that deserve support and care, and that should definitely be done by a professional. So not a teacher and not in a school setting.
I got 3 little kids. I got 2 little daughters. I worry a lot of the time, what's happening behind those closed doors that I got to give 24 hours notice before I can go into and find out what they're talking about. And then I remember that so much of what's happening to these kids is happening on the outside. And I look at these kids and I thank God for what Bruce said. I've met kids in distress, and no, I'm not going to go along with their imaginations about things. And yes, I think it's abhorrent that the age of consent in Colorado is 12 years old. I was one of those kids that if I would have got caught by that machine, Lord knows what would have happened to me. Luckily, I was poor and white trash and they didn't want me. But we need to protect our kids from that. It's very important. Thank you very much.
Whether the Bible should be taught in schools?
Fine line between what the government can and does mandate and faith. I've also lived in other faith countries around the world who it becomes part of their culture. For instance, the Taliban, where religion can be used in a weaponized way. In the United States, there is a fine line between church and state. I choose to send my children to a Christian school. There's no questions asked. What you're getting to is, should we be allowing Bibles back into a public school setting? And I don't have an answer for that right now. I send my kids to a Christian school, and if you have those means, you should be sending your kids to a Christian school. Should me as an English teacher, should I be allowed to talk about the Bible as an ancient text in a public school? I can, I do, and I will, and I'll keep doing it. There are ways to bring the Bible in a very academic way that has nothing to do with crossing that line. So it's about using your faith and being creative and still getting the words into the hearts and minds of children, whether or not you do that through a government function.
I grew up on the Bible. My mom used to set me next to the kitchen sink while she was doing dishes and have me do memory verses. And I can tell you that for 4 years in a row, I was the memory verse king at our kids' crusade every year. So I'm very proud of that. I've got a picture showing me with the crown and everything. So the Bible is the greatest collection of wisdom that is available to humankind. And the word says that thy word is a lamp unto my feet and a light unto my path. And I think if we can bring light to kids' lives through the Bible, we should do that. However, I would not want to be teaching sectarianism in the schools. I think we use the Bible. I love the idea that Oklahoma is doing, is teaching it as literature and history. And I think that's where we should probably go with that. I don't want somebody who is a non-believer trying to use the Bible to influence my kids to believe the way that they do. So I would not support teaching it for religion.
So two-parter. Answer to the first question, yes. As a constitutionalist, separation of church and state was to protect the church, not the state. So I have met a couple of youth pastors up north that are part of an organization that organize students who want to pray in schools. And so they support those students forming prayer groups in the schools with their peers, and then support and advocate for them to have safe spaces to pray. You have a right in the Constitution to practice your faith no matter where you are. Our children have a right to pray if that is what they want to do, and they should be allowed to.
I believe that the values of the Bible are deeply embedded in all of the best things about public education, about America, and about who we are. I think it's very important to have those principles uplifting us in all that we do. I also believe in authenticity. This is an aside, but one of my favorite movies is To Kill a Mockingbird. I love Gregory Peck in that. I got a poster of him up on my wall. I try hard to be a better person. I look at that every day before I go out. I firmly believe that Atticus Finch could bring people to God, to Jesus Christ, like people need to be brought, without having to wave a Bible in their face. And in fact, I think the real struggle is one of authenticity. How do you get young people to believe you? Not the amazing young people that these guys touch, but the ones in my neighborhood, the ones who need saved. That's by being authentic. So any way that we can that doesn't get stopped, yeah, we need faith, and we need the Bible.
So there you have it, folks. There's the candidates. We've got another school board election season. You've got your ballots. Probably many of you maybe have already voted. Maybe you're still on the fence. Choose wisely. Do your civic duty. Anyway, if you like this podcast, if you don't like this podcast, whatever, please like it. Please leave a comment, right? Please share it with your friends, with your family, with your coworkers. Help us get it out there. I don't know. I don't know what the future of this thing is. So, your help is appreciated. If you like this reporting, though, also keep in mind the work that I do, the things that I go to, the stuff that I write about, it's all funded by the generous donations of viewers and readers like you. So please consider making a tax-deductible donation to our nonprofit newsroom at coloradotimesrecorder.com. Also, make sure you follow us on social media. We're on Facebook, we're on Blue Sky, we're on Instagram, we're on TikTok. We're everywhere that you want to be. So give us a follow. Stay safe out there. Until next time. Choose wisely. Do your civic duty. I did a duty this morning. It was civic. I have to do a blooper reel sometime. Podcast stuff.